All right. Well, welcome everybody. So thank you for the introduction, Madison. Um, yeah, so we're here talking about SBIRs, STTRs. This is um, the federal government's uh, contract mechanism to get money out into small businesses. It is non-dilutive funding for early stage innovations. My name is Matt Hutton. I've got a background in engineering, so I worked for an engineering firm for a long time that I've made most of its hay doing contracts with the federal government. So a good amount of contracting experience with the Department of Energy, with the NSF, or National Science Foundation, a little bit with the EPA, and then a few others. And that's how I have this experience. I've been with the Cal Poly CIA since about 2017, advising clients. So a little bit of an agenda for today. I'm going to give some SBIR, STTR background, and then take a look at how you go about getting started. Like, how do you get involved in the SBIR program and start to make use of it? And then walk through some of the main points of the application process when you're actually proposing a project to the SBIR programs. Um, and then leave some time for questions and discussion. I've also got some additional resources if you're a company that's at the stage where you're looking for SBIRs. These might also be of interest to you. And just the housekeeping thing, if you've got questions, please don't be shy. I think, it's fine for me to go on autopilot. I can certainly do that and kind of walk through the SBIR program. But yeah, well, you've got me here. I think it's probably most useful to you if you've got questions to ask them, and you can take advantage while we're all here together. All right. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. This is a program that was established by an act of Congress in 1982. So it's been around for about 40 years, a long heritage. The purpose of the program uh, was really to spur small businesses in the United States doing innovative things, or in other words, to create an innovation economy um, in the United States and stimulate that economy. So Congress went to the executive branch agencies and said every executive branch agency that has an extramural research activities needs to spend a certain portion of the funds they put into those programs on small businesses that are doing innovative things in kind of their technical area. So, the Environmental Protection Agency is engaged in environmental technologies, the Department of Energy and energy technologies, and so forth. There are 11 executive branch agencies that participate in the SBIR programs, and that some of them also have like sub agencies that participate and are administered separately. But yeah, the point is it's a common program architecture that's implemented a little bit differently in 11 different places. So same kind of contracting mechanism and project structure, but available independently at all of these different agencies. The common goal of the SBIR program, and this is their mission statement, is to fund a diverse portfolio of startups and small businesses across technology areas and markets to stimulate technological innovation, meet federal research and development needs, and increase commercialization to transition R&D into impact. So that's a mouthful, but it actually has quite a bit of salient information in it. So I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things. First of all, small business. So this program is designed for small businesses. That is who they want to fund. It's conceived so that technically, you don't even have to be incorporated at the time of the application. Um, really meant for anything from garage scale up to, take your pick of measurement of what a small business is. In some cases, it can be up to $100 million in revenue, but they do like to fund new companies, and they do like to see startups. So all focused on small businesses. You need to meet that definition of small business in order to be eligible. Technological innovation. So the program is oriented toward innovative technologies. It is not to do iterative developments of existing technologies, things that are not really construed as a breakthrough by the agency. It should be relatively high risk for the most part. There are going to be some exceptions to this, but relatively high risk high reward technology areas. That's why the government sees it's appropriate for them to put money into these things. Otherwise, conventional financing might be able to manage, like for business expansion and stuff like that. So, very important. Your concept is innovative. Federal research and development or R&D needs. So, I highlighted this because you really are responding in the SBIR program to the R&D needs as they're interpreted by each of the agencies. So, in other words, the executive branch, um, the National Institutes of Health will set its own goals for what they see as important, what they would like to put money into. Um, and that's basically what you'll be responding to. So they're going to solicit projects on specific topics, and then you're going to respond and say, all right, here's how I can fill that need that you're asking for technology to fill. A commercialization. So this is really vital for the SBIR programs. It is all focused on commercialization. What's considered a success to the SBIR program is if they give you a little bit of money, you take the money, put it to good use, developing a technology or business, and then you kind of take flight in the economy. Um, in most cases, they don't want to be the end user of what you're doing. They just want to identify a need, put in some seed funding, and then see your business grow. Lastly, impact. So in many cases during an SBIR application, you'll be asked about impact. It's extremely important pretty much across agencies. So all of the agencies really value this. What they mean by impact is how will this benefit the economy? So, there's the kind of narrow definition of what technology they're looking for and what problem they see it as addressing. So maybe they're looking for new medical interventions into kidney disease. They're interested not only in addressing that specific need, but also how you think that this technology might be applied toward different problems. Can it also be applied toward like cognitive health, for example? But then more broadly, is this something that will eventually reduce missed days of work and school for people that are suffering from kidney diseases? How will that ramify throughout the economy? They really want to see you, understand where you fit in and think pretty broadly about, the growth of the business and how your technology may be applied in the future. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I'm hoping you have a pretty good understanding of what the program is oriented around and kind of the broader points of its goals, the objectives of the SBIR program. And for now, all right. Well, don't feel afraid to interject if anything comes up. Um, yeah. So a little bit of background on the project format. Again, the agencies are going to solicit projects on specific technical problems. So they'll release a document with a number of technical needs. You'll respond with an application saying, I can address this technical need with the technology I'm developing. Your proposal must be responsive administratively and technically. So what does that mean? So in terms of administration, you have to really, there we go. You have to really hit all the points that they're asking for. So are you within the budget constraints that they've set out? Are you under the budget maximum? Do you have all the research institute requirements that they have set out? Do you have the participation from all the partners? Schedule constraints. Are you proposing a clinical trial when they said you could not do that? These sorts of things are the administrative points of whether you're responsive to the solicitation. And then obviously the technical points. So does your technology address the need that they have asked you to address the technology? These are 3-phase projects. So basically, for the most part, you're going to be applying for a phase 1 project in your first go around. Phase 1, they have a little bit of a different take on it at different agencies, but typically it's going to be a proof of concept project. about 6 to 12 months in duration, to support the technical merit or the scientific merit of the research avenue that you're pursuing. Um, Usually around 100 to $250,000 of federal funding. Uh, so that is, it sounds like a lot, but the money goes quickly, um, and the time is also relatively constrained. So, um, 12 months is not a whole lot of time to get, a research project done. So these tend to be in phase one pretty kind of compact projects, relatively few complex technical tasks, and then you're reporting basically on what you did and immediately going for phase two. So phase two for a startup business is really the prize here. They can be from 500,000 to a little over $1 million, I think. Again, that varies agency to agency. Phase two is typically 1 to 2 years in duration. And in phase two, you're expanding on the phase one results. So, in phase one, you're demonstrating to the agency, hey, this is a really promising area of exploration. You're producing results within that phase one project that indicate that, and then using those results to apply for phase two. There's also a phase three, which would be the commercialization phase of the program. It's a lot less common. The SBIR programs don't actually have funding earmarked for phase three. So phase three essentially is a way of protecting your intellectual property, offering you the same intellectual property protections as you have in the SBIR programs, but extending it. The agency would have to, in this case, see the value in what you're developing, and then bring funds over from some other pot of money at the agency. But again, they would extend your intellectual property rights. And with the SBIR programs in general, when I talk about intellectual property rights, I'm just referring to their intentions that you develop the technology, you own the technology, and you kind of guide it onto success out there in the economy. So again, intellectual property protections in phase three, less common, but basically lets you continue under the same sorts of contractual arrangement. And the size can be really anything. Often it's legal support or, support for like validating projects and technologies out in the market, things like that. All right. So does anybody have any questions so far? Nothing. I can't see all the participants in the view I've got. So just,
We have one question in the room, Matt. I'm gonna take the microphone over.
All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I had two quick questions. The first was actually, it was back to the small business definition. I was wondering if you could just repeat what that was.
So I would refer you, since I'm not an accountant or a lawyer, to SBIA.gov. So when you go to apply for an SBA, you need to register on SBIA.gov. That's basically going to represent, the government's determination that you are a small business. So you're going to join that website, tell them how many employees you have and how many millions of dollars in revenue you have. Typically, those two factors in some combination are going to get you the definition of small business. But in general, I think it's usually up to 100 staff or employees, and then the amount of revenue varies, but it's higher than you would think for most small businesses. It's like millions of dollars. So most of these determinations are going to be made for like garage scale on the basis of the employees.
Okay, thank you. And the other question had to do with the time frames on the three phases we just looked at. So are those time frames when the funds are being dispersed, or is what is the kind of lead time for applying and getting to where funds are being dispersed?
Yeah, so usually about 5 to 7 months from the time that you apply to the time that an award would be made. That hinges on how quick the agency is to respond and how quick you are to get through the contracting. A lot of the time, it helps if you're really kind of eager and pushing that along and driving it. Um, and then, you're doing the project for 6 to 12 months, the actual work. Um, and then in a lot of cases, before that project is even over, you're going to be applying for phase two. So it'll overlap. Uh, Phase two has a higher rate of successful applications than phase one. So I think it'll be obvious to you, partway through phase one, whether the agency has an appetite to advance to phase two. And you can, glean some insight from your interactions with them on how you would approach a phase two application.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So just a little bit on the kind of flavors of SBIR. There are a few different ones. So SBIR is the really classic kind of, bread and butter. We got a question here. Is this course for tech research companies? Does it include all businesses? So it includes small businesses doing something innovative. Um, but more generally than that, it includes small businesses that are able to respond to one of the solicitations. So the definition of innovation depends on which agency you're working with. For example, the Department of Defense, sometimes they will just ask you to design or build something that doesn't exist out there in the market. Maybe it's a rocket test frame or something. And they'll say, hey, use your expertise to design this and build it. So kind of more of an engineering problem. But across the board, most of the agencies are going to be thinking of things that, have a more conventional kind of feel of innovation. So like high risk, high reward technologies. Okay. Yeah, it's different. I would encourage you to maybe look at some of the contracting SBIR programs like the DoD and stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit. So, yeah. So SBIR is kind of vanilla SBIR. It's the original program. The kind of defining characteristic is that 2/3 of the funding needs to go to a small business, at least. So you can have partners, you can have subcontracts, but say you've got $150,000 grant, $100,000 would need to go to your small business at a minimum. The next one is the STTR, or Small Business Technology Transfer. Basically, this was created because professors at universities started doing SBIRs, and then they would leave their university posts by themselves out of teaching for semesters, and that caused trouble for the university. So the SBA created the Small Business Technology Transfer. This has a minimum participation of 40% of the small business, with a requirement that at least 30% by budget is done by a research institution. So that can be nonprofit research institution, usually university, or like a nonprofit teaching hospital or lab or something like that. And really, it's a way of getting money into universities, which are the locus of research in the United States, without torpedoing those universities or having staff leave or anything like that. SBIRs and STTRs can be grants or contracts. With grants, the PIs would do their best to complete research and achieve a desired aim that they've kind of designed. So this is more of what you think of as like the conventional definition of research, fairly open-ended. Alternatively, there are contracts, which are going to be more demanding from like a contractual point of view, with more specific deliverables at the end. The contracting agency may be looking to procure a good or service that they'll be the direct beneficiary of. Again, I use the example of the DoD applying some, using an SBIR to acquire some widget that doesn't exist. You see that relatively frequently. There are direct to phase two projects. So you can go straight from phase one to phase two and apply just once to be awarded both of those. You can only do that in instances where they tell you can in the solicitation. And they still are separate projects. So even though you're just applying once, you need to meet all the requirements of phase one in order to roll over and have the funds released for phase two. There's technology transfer opportunities through the SBIR program. So basically, this is like using the SBIR contract mechanism to have you take a technology that was developed and for some reason is owned by the federal government and try to commercialize it. So a lot of the time, this would be like a technology that was developed at one of the national labs. And yeah, again, the government doesn't want to develop technologies and commercialize things. So they would pass that off to a small business to try to take it and run with it. Lastly, there are open topics. So there are topics available in which you're not responding specifically to an agency prompt. I typically guide people to be a little bit wary of those unless the agency knows and expects your application in an open topic. The odds of success are slightly lower than a regular SBIR. All right, so these are the participating agencies. Department of Agriculture, Commerce, Defense, Education, Energy, Health and Human Services. That includes the Centers for Disease Control, the FDA, our Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health. So all three agencies under the HHS umbrella. The Department of Homeland Security, Department of Transportation, Environmental Protection Agency, NASA, and then the National Science Foundation. And I've indicated here who offers grants and who offers contracts. Again, the grants are more kind of open-ended. So, more the traditional kind of concept of research. The contracts are a little bit more, specific deliverables due at the end of the program. And as I mentioned before, some of these agencies are going to have separate offices within the agency that will administer the SBIR program independently. So, you may have at the Department of Energy several different solicitations at a time. Same goes for especially DoD, but also a few of the other agencies. All right, so here's just a snapshot. This is 2019, the most recent year that I found. And this is funding by agency. So it gives you kind of an idea of where the funds really are in this program. So the lion's share of SBIR funding is available through Health and Human Services, the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, the National Science Foundation, and NASA. All right, those are going to be the really big agencies. After those, the programs tend to get a little bit smaller. You can see like down in the tens of millions of dollars a year. That still may be 50 projects or something like that they're issuing per year, but it's not like the enormous scale that you get with like the DoD or the NSF. In green, they have the contracts indicated, or sorry, the grants indicated. In blue, the contracts. So, this gives you some sense. If you're interested in doing like a research topic, you're going to focus probably in those areas in green. Alternatively, if you have something that's a little bit more commercial ready, you might be focused on the contracting agencies in blue. In terms of the success rate for applying for an SBIR, the most recent data that I've got is from, I think, 2019 also. Phase 1 NSF applications had a 17% success rate, all right, and phase 2 had a 60% success rate. So again, a pretty low success rate for phase 1. You can do a lot to arm yourself and put in a good application just by doing your legwork and your research up front. But then phase 2, a much higher success rate. You'll know whether or not there's a good likelihood of winning a phase 2. All right, so the SBIR life cycle starts with proposal submission, and then your proposal will be reviewed. This is just kind of a general framework of what happens. Again, this varies agency to agency, but in general, it's going to go through 3 different checks. At first, the compliance check. Do you have all the appropriate documents included? Did you ask for something that's under the budget cap? Those are the sort of compliance components. Is it within the date range that they specified? All those sorts of things. This is often going to be done by computer. So if you're not meeting these compliance requirements, your application more likely than not will not be reviewed by any human. It'll just be peeled off by the computers, and they'll say, sorry, we have to decline. The second uh, a scientific review. So a lot of the time, this may be done by outside reviewers, people from universities or from laboratories or hospitals throughout the country that are experts in the subject, and kind of non-partial, so not members of the agency, and they're just reviewing for scientific merit. So, again, you're proposing something that's an innovative concept. It's innovative and science and technology, and they're going to look at it and say, hey, is this really possible? Is it possible within the budget? Are you proposing to build a perpetual motion machine? Things like that. And so they will identify a stack of the proposals that they think are scientifically meritorious and pass those back to the agency. The agency will receive a stack of proposals that are, scientifically meritorious that they can choose to fund or not. And the agency will then do its programmatic selection. This just has to do with like, what are the agency goals this year? Where do they want to put their research funding? They've got all these projects that are meritorious, great teams, good concepts, good projects, but they can only fund so many of them. So, one way to think about this is like at the USDA, maybe they did like, 10, 10 cow projects last year and 5 pig projects. And this year they just want to do the reverse and get some money into, the pork industry or whatever it is. Those sorts of programmatic considerations. And the only way you can really kind of understand what they're expecting to see, and prepare yourself for that is by doing agency outreach, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So if your proposal is selected, you'll get a letter of intent to issue an award. That'll come to you by email. And it'll basically say, hey, we want to negotiate toward an award. Usually a month or two to develop all the contract documents. They're going to have a boilerplate contract and agreements for a lot of this stuff. You also will have a chance to, to include anything in the contracts or propose to include anything that you would like to. At the end of that period, you're going to sign a contract with the government and then receive the funds, or not necessarily in a lump sum, but they will release funds internally for you to support your project. And then you go into the performance period, which is the 6 to 12 month actual project. Phase 2 again may overlap. In many cases, you're doing final reporting and trying to do the phase 2 application at the same time. But yeah, that's kind of a walk through the SBIR experience. So how do you get started with SBIR programs? First of all, choose an agency that you're interested in. Again, there are 11 the different branches that award SBIRs within those agencies. Sometimes they're very diverse in terms of what they'll fund. So think about, who might be interested in what you're doing. You can gain insight into that by reviewing recent awards. So go to SBIR.gov, this SBIR search website. So this is a database of like all SBIRs for the last 20 years. And it won't have the full project, but it'll have, the level of funding. Was it phase 1, phase 2? What state did it occur in? And an abstract. So like basically a paragraph summary of the project. Read those. That database is searchable by keyword. Start to get a sense of how the agency thinks about the technology area that you're working in, the language that they use, and then speak to them, in the same language. You give yourself a major leg up in doing that. There is a separate database, NIH Reporter, that catalogs all NIH funding. So, that's includes SBIRs, but also everything else. So you can see what their research priorities are recently. And then start to look at like the schedules for the SBIR programs. So these 11 different agencies, they run on different schedules. You can check, there's a summary, a calendar at SBIR.gov, which is a website that's run by the SBA, so not one of the grant making agencies. But take a look at the calendar, and then I would refer, once you kind of have zoomed in on an area of interest, to the agency's website. Okay, so that the SBA site, SBIR.gov, it's not necessarily up to date with what the agencies are doing. They try, but it's not always perfect. So the agency's website is always the authoritative source. All right. And then look at their solicitation, focus in on a topic of interest. You're going to kind of conceive of a project in your mind and start to map out, hey, this is the prompt, this is what they're looking for, and here's how I can be responsive to that. I'm going to propose this technology. Here's what I would do in phase one to do that. And then as allowable, share that with the agency. Most of these agencies allow outreach. It may be restricted in some cases at like NASA and the DoD. They have guidance on when you can reach out to the agency staff, but you're going to have a chance to reach out to the technical staff of the agencies that are administering these projects and talk with them about your idea. So take advantage of that. Do that. All right. It's enormously helpful to get their insight. Sometimes, they're just people. Sometimes they may not be that responsive. And you'll get some that just won't give you the time of day. Other times they'll spend half an hour on the phone with you and really kind of guide you. And that's just really, really valuable to have that time with them. Then they know to expect your application too. Really goes a long way. So yeah, do the agency outreach as allowable. Register for all the websites. So just get this out of the way early. I'll talk about that in a second here, and then you can begin to work on your proposal. All right, so this is kind of what I meant when I said register at the websites. These are kind of like the prerequisite steps to applying for an SBIR. Technically, you don't have to incorporate, I think, for most agencies at the time of the application, but practically it helps a lot. So go ahead and incorporate your company. I would just do that as kind of a pre-step. That allows you to finish all these other registrations. You need to get an EIN number or a federal tax ID number. You need to have a UEI. This is a new unique entity identifier is what it stands for. They're transitioning to UEI from DUNS. So, this is basically like a social security number for your business. And you can see on that website kind of how you go about getting one of those. These are all free, by the way. Don't, there are websites out there that'll be like offer to do this for you for a certain amount of money. It's all free. Don't take the bait on any of that stuff. Register at SBIR.gov. Again, that's going to validate that you're a small business. So when you actually go to submit your application, you'll print a PDF off of the SBIR.gov website that says, hey, it's October 12th and this business is a small business. It's not delinquent on its taxes. They kind of passed the test. And you include that in your application. Then register for the system for award management. A lot of the agencies, not all, but a lot will administer their proposal through this. So like the web form that you actually fill out and load your proposal documents into, and maybe in SAM.gov, some of also the contracting documents and stuff when you're in the contracting phase and agreements might be like passed back and forth through SAM.gov. So it's like a Dropbox and web forms and stuff like that all rolled into one. Grants.gov, some of the agencies will use this to receive applications. And then any agency or department specific registrations. So like for the DoD, you need a special one. Same for the Department of Energy. They're all going to have their own, like, whatever website it is. But this information will all be in the solicitation. So when you read the solicitation for the SBIR from the agency, it will have a list of all of these. Just make sure you do these early, get it out of the way. A lot of the time, the different websites are going to need to like ping each other, to validate that you're a real company that exists. And it may take a few days for them to communicate and finalize your registrations at the website. So you don't want to be waiting for that at the last minute. Just get it out of the way. All right. So I want to talk next about that initial kind of development of your project concept. Again, this is prior to like doing the outreach with an agency, but you've read the solicitation at this point. You're going to start thinking about the specific aims or key objectives of your project. These are the ones that come up the most when I talk with people. So this is just the terminology that the NIH uses and the NSF uses. So at NIH, it would be called specific aims, key objectives at the NSF. All the different agencies are going to have something like this, but basically what this is 3 to 5 goals that you're going to have within your project, within the 6 to 12 month project, that move the technology further along toward commercialization. So think really, really critically about these. You need to design specific games that are concise, punchy, that tie clearly to the goals that the agency has solicited. So these aims should clearly link to the solicitation. Yeah, and basically, the reviewers should be able to read your specific aims, what you're going to do in the project, and understand where you're going with the whole thing. So um, really kind of spend some time conceiving of what would I actually do in this project. Um, this is I've got some information here. This is actually how to write specific aims, but I would probably hold off on that. You don't need to write the entire thing. Just conceive of them at this point before you actually do the agency outreach, and kind of have them in your back pocket as you approach the technical staff at the agency. Um, so agency outreach. What do you need to do first? Research the recent funding activity. Okay, if you are knowledgeable about what the agency has funded last year and the year before, then you're speaking the same language as the technical staff, and it really, really benefits you to be able to do that. Um, Look at the citations that they've got in the solicitation. So a lot of the time, they're going to solicit technology on one particular technical area. They'll cite papers or white papers relating to that. So read those, understand, hey, this is what the agency read when they were soliciting this project. I need to know that background too. All right, and then you can be, again, speaking the same language. Review the backgrounds of the program staff. So not all the time, but a lot of the time they'll actually publish the staff, and you can do a little bit of research on, what did this person study in school, what's their kind of technical background and their perspective, and just know who you're talking to when you reach out to them. Um, Definitely follow the instructions. You do not want to reach out outside of the date range when you're allowed to reach out, and you don't want to ask any questions that may make the program staff feel awkward. There are going to be some things that they're like touchy about answering for you. That will all be spelled out in the solicitation. Um, and just kind of think about that before you go into the conversation. Really understand the solicitation, and then I generally guide people, if you can get a phone call. A lot of the time they'll be a little bit more like free and sharing stuff. It's just better to have them on the phone if possible, I think, than just emailing back and forth. So you might email them and say, hey, can we schedule a call? And then when you're ready to make that call, just basically tell them, hey, I read your solicitation. Here's what I understand it to be. Here's what I would propose to do in a project and how it meets the needs that you solicited. So you're basically telling them, I understand what you've asked for. I've got this technology I think I can develop that will really kind of advance toward what your goal is, the agency goal. And then just be open to feedback. They may say no, we want to take it in a different direction. But a lot of the time they're going to give you really practical feedback. Like, they may tell you at the NIH, which has 50 some odd sub agencies, I know it looks like you should be applying to my group, but I would put the application in this other office at the NIH. Those people are really, really kind of knowledgeable about what you're talking about. That's just really valuable feedback. So once you get that, you go through the process of kind of, refining your project concept. Then you can start with the proposal process. Basically, I say obtain all the relevant documents first. That's kind of step zero. There's going to be solicitation. The topics may be in a separate document than the solicitation. Most of the agencies have like a style guide. So, that's going to be like a 50-page document on like what fonts can you use, and what are the page limitations for all this, all the different sections of the proposal. And then what I always do is map out those requirements. So you just make yourself a spreadsheet, and then you've got all the proposal elements listed. You can list the page limits. You can list, the status of each of these. Is it complete? Where is it going to be loaded into the application in grants.gov? all of that. And then as you start to write, begin with the aims and work plan. So again, really, really, think about like, what are you going to do in this project? How does that map to the agency goals and translate that into technical tasks that you're going to propose to do within the project schedule? Uh, I usually start there and then write around that. All right, because then you've got an idea of what this project actually looks like, the size and shape of it. And you can fill in the technical background, the narrative stuff around that, but really kind of know your project that you're proposing backwards and forwards before you do. Does anybody have any questions? No questions now. All right, so just I want to walk through, some of the basic elements of a proposal, and each of these would be basically a different document that you're going to submit into your proposal. So the first one, front matter, generally you're going to have like a summary document that says, hey, this is a company, this is their UEI, these are the dates, this is the total project budget, the budget by period, by month, whatever it's broken down by. Those kinds of like top line numbers and like descriptive, points of information about your project. I, you know, I usually do this first and then circle back to it at the end, because you need to make sure that the budget, the total budget, for example, agrees in your budget documents with what you've actually got in the front matter. So those sorts of things, the dates, the title of your project, if you've changed the title while you've been writing the proposal, just circle back and make sure that all is the same. And then there's usually a summary or an abstract. So, different language at different agencies again, but some sort of like 1-pager or 2-pager that really kind of boils your project down into, a digestible form for maybe like non-initiated people in the field. A lot of the time that's going to go to or be available to members of Congress. So, it's on their map, like what projects are being done in their district. Some of them take an active interest in this and like to try to, see research dollars in their district. So, yeah, think about somebody like that reading it. It's not necessarily the nitty gritty technical, but follow the agency instructions. All that varies by agency. All right. So then the narrative, this is what you probably think of when you think of writing a proposal. This is going to be the 5 to 15 page narrative description. So paragraphical description of your project. Include citations in this. People tend to like stick them all over the place, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But you really should cite in the technical background, heavily. This is where you're really getting into the science and stuff like that. Again, follow agency instructions. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few moments here. The work plan. So the work plan is, it's the core of your project. It's the actual steps and tasks that you're going to do. Again, it should be relatively concise. 6 to 12 months, it's not a lot of time. And each of the tasks in the work plan should lead directly to one of your key objectives or your specific aims. So it should be really clear why you're doing each task. What does this relate to in terms of the goals of this work? Again, between the specific aims and the work plan, a reviewer should be able to just read those two things, maybe a few pages, and really kind of understand, oh, I know what they're doing. I know what they're going for here in this application. The schedule, straightforward enough. You need to have a schedule. It should indicate everything that the agency requires first and foremost, but generally who's involved, when are they doing the work, what are they doing, those sorts of things. The team section, we'll expand on that a little bit later, but biographical information or resumes. A resource plan. A lot of first-time applicants really underestimate the importance of a resource plan. So depending on the agency, this might be called facilities and resources, or like resources and equipment, whatever it is. You need to convince the agency that if they award the dollars, you'll actually have the ability to carry out the project. So what does that mean? If you're going to need office space and laptops, do you have them available? Do you have a place rented? You don't need to, but it helps in the resource plan to say, I don't have a space yet, but if you make this award, here's the going rate for, light manufacturing, real estate in my city with a roll-up door in front. That's all I need. And I think it's going to be $10,000 a year, whatever it is. So a resource plan, that's especially important at universities where, instruments like, think of like really expensive instruments, a scanning electron microscope or, a cell sorter or something like that, a supercomputer. Are you going to have time on those instruments that you've needed to do what you're promising to do in this project? So convince them that the space and the equipment is there. The budget needs to be compliant and then appropriate. So, one person probably shouldn't be taking $150,000 of a $150,000 project. Just they're checking for like reasonableness here. And if you have questions about how to set your rate, if you don't have one yet, you can always refer to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data on, I think they have like 800 jobs posted and, general compensation data for each of those jobs in different areas of the country. So you can't go wrong if you refer to that. Subcontract documents. So if you're doing a subcontract to like a research institution for an STTR, you need to have all of their documents. That's basically going to be your proposal again in miniature. So sub-awardees, they need to have their own budget. They need to have their own, team section, which staff are going to work on, all these things. So get that stuff out to your subcontractors early, your partners on the project. If you're going to be working with the university, send them all the documents that you're going to need back from them. Just jump on it early because it may take a while to get back. But basically, you're going to roll that up and put it in your application. Letters of support, we'll talk about that in a minute. A commercialization plan. So again, very important for most of these agencies. They're going to want to see at least like a go-to-market strategy. Are you going to be licensing technology, selling widgets? Are you going to be, providing services? Like what is your kind of business strategy? And then top line numbers. They may want to see some information that indicates you understand the market. What is the total addressable market for the technology that you're developing? What is the total capturable market? This doesn't have to be, a thesis, but do the research, give them the top line numbers. They're going to have specific instructions for this. So just review the instructions and then, you'll be good there, but put some time into it. And then lastly, an IP management plan. So not always a requirement of phase one, usually required in phase two. But an IP management plan will just clarify for the agency if you've got partners, who owns what, who's doing what, who owns the information. And the agency doesn't really have a stake in it other than they just don't want their funds to be spent on a project that results in a lawsuit. So just make everything clear kind of at the outset. All right, Linda's got a question. Is manufacturing needed in phase one? Do you mean in phase one? So only if you're proposing to manufacture things. You don't have to manufacture anything in phase one. You're designing the project. If you say, as part of my phase one goals, I'm going to manufacture something, then you would need to indicate to them how you plan to do that you have the space available and what you'll do. But if not, then no, you don't need to have it available. All right. So a little bit of just like grant writing tone, and these are, really, really kind of basic concepts for how you are going to structure a grant and write it. Efficiency of writing is really paramount. A lot of the time, the reviewers are going to have read 24 proposals in the same day. They're going to be sitting down with a stack of these proposals. It may be at their kitchen table at home at night, and the kids are screaming. So you want to really efficiently and in a way that they is legible to them, capture the important points. So What does that mean? Uh, you know, short sentences, avoid unnecessary words, use the terminology that they are using, reflect that back, um, so that everything is really readily recognizable to them. Um, it should be really, really clear to them, like where to find information. So they're going to have a rubric, a scoring rubric for your application, that will say, is this innovative? Is the team appropriate? Things like that. And then there'll be sub requirements for each of those. Address those. Look at the scoring rubric and say, this is innovative because. Start your sentence like that. Do that in order so that when they're looking and trying to like review the proposal and score the proposal, they can just kind of roll through and be like, oh, yeah, it's innovative. I see they've led me directly to this decision that I can say, 5 out of 5, this is definitely an innovative project. All right. And then it's like the Ernest Hemingway style, 10 to 20 words per sentence. Okay. Avoid extraneous words again. Most of the front matter and like the summaries and stuff like that, this varies a little bit by agency, but most of that is going to be written toward a generally scientifically literate audience that's not necessarily uh, really experienced in what you're doing. So you may have like a PhD in what you're doing, um, and if you do, you need to understand that a lot of the reviewers won't. So it still should be recognizable to them, and they still should understand what you're doing. Um, there is a time and place to get into the really technical details, and usually it's going to be in the project background and um, the work plan. So when you're talking about like maybe the scientific methods you're going to use, the lab tests and things like that. Then you get it into the science. It gets a little bit more complex scientifically, but just understand that that sort of material is harder to read, and you really kind of want to target this at somebody who's knowledgeable and distracted, or not really that knowledgeable in the specific subject matter. And then just some overall tips. Tell a story. Okay. The story, like for an NSF, the story really is, I've got this technology that's very promising, but it's a high risk, kind of unproven. Um, you can put a little bit of money into the development of this technology, and then that's going to get us over the hump. And really, all these, riches await in terms of addressing, the economic gaps that they're really kind of aiming, or the disease, the economic problem, the computing need, whatever it is. But that's your story. That's a really powerful kind of narrative that you're developing this technology, and that it's going to have this impact further on down the road. Respond to each prompt in order. So again, just really, really kind of address each bullet point. Like in the NSF, when they ask for a commercialization, it's going to be one paragraph, but there will be like 5 sentences in their prompt for what do you need to have in the commercialization section. Address those in order. You can even think break up your paragraphs by the commercialization, by the short team section that you have in the narrative. Everything should be in the order that they're expecting to see it. Address the review criteria again. So if they've published their rubric that they'll score by, address those things. This is innovative because that sort of sentence structure. Let the agency make your case for you with citations. So again, if they've got a topic prompt that cites specific documents, use those. A lot of the time, there will be authorizing documents for the agency. What act of the president or of Congress permits them to spend $30 million on, this type of on developing this type of computer software in fiscal year 23-24. It's executive order, whatever it is. Go and read that. That's going to be published in solicitation. They'll say, in response to the president's executive order on yada, 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 we're soliciting technologies. Reflect that back at them. Use the language that the government uses on why it's important economically. That really shows them that you understand. Have your own review committee. So leave yourself enough time and avail yourself of enough kind of friends and reviewers to to get feedback. It's really important. Does anybody have any questions? No. Okay. So just digging into the work plan a little bit. Again, this is like basically the core of your application. The first and most important thing is to follow the agency instructions. A knowledgeable reader should get the gist of your work from your work plan alone of where you're headed in the project. So yeah, that's it. You want, in general, like 2 to 5 tasks. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't add a lot of tasks. For the tasks, think about the SMART task regime: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. This is how the agency will evaluate your success in phase 1. Now, you have an opportunity to control your stars by designing the tasks that you're going to do. So do that. It should be readily apparent whether you've met with success in each of these tasks. So think about tasks that are relatively within reach, that you're confident that you can do, and that it's easy to demonstrate that you can do. So don't do a task that's like open-ended, like I'm going to explore this, that, and the other. What's the outcome? How do they validate that you've explored something? If you want to do something like that, then you would frame the task as, I'm going to conduct a literature review on this. And then there's a work output, then there's a deliverable, and they can say, oh, did they do the lit review? Yeah, check the box. They've succeeded in task 1. Okay, got a question from Linda. If page requirement is 2 to 4 pages, 1.5, okay. I would stick with what they're saying. You don't need to you don't need to go all the way up to the page limit, but I would be within the threshold. So basically, if they're saying 2 to 4 pages, they're expecting a level of detail that they don't think can be fit into 1 page. So I would just try to hit that kind of goal. Yeah. So then the last thing I want to say about the tasks is, or actually a couple more things. What I mean when I say they should be relevant, they should map really directly to the specific aims of the project. It should be clear to them reading your proposal, this is the task they're going to do. This team is going to do within, month 7 of this project. This is why they're going to do it. This is how we're measuring success, and this is why they're doing this task. It's going to produce some evidence that this is a promising area of technology and that we should give them phase 2. So really lead them there with the tasks. It should really, really make sense to them why you're doing each of these, and each one should be really meaningful, okay, in terms of like advancing in science. That doesn't mean that you can't have some concise tasks. I mean, task 1 may be like setting up a test stand. That's fine. If you need to assemble some equipment or something, it's reasonable to have that task. But it's open-ended. It doesn't necessarily map to a key aim, but it's obvious why it's important for getting to the key aim. So limit iteration and dependencies. A lot of first-time applications get stuck here. You don't want to have a task 2 that depends solely on your task 1, because then if you get stuck or something goes off the rails in task 1, you're not going to be able to succeed in task 2. So you should think about designing tasks that don't depend on each other too much, unless you're really confident you can do them. Again, you're designing your own tasks, design tasks that you can complete. So yeah, limit iteration. They don't like seeing that. Iteration is like, oh, well, we're going to do a round of software design, and then we're going to, solicit feedback on it, and then we're going to redesign it. Don't do that. It should be pretty open and shut in terms of each of the tasks. Gantt chart is really helpful in helping the giving the agency a picture of how your tasks are going to look, and when in time they'll happen. And then generally I'd allow like a month if possible at the end of the project just for final reporting. You don't want to be, playing around with test tubes in the lab on the last day of your project, because that means that you're doing work the agency won't capture in the final reporting. All right. So build that into your project, and just kind of like wind down the physical work prior to the end, usually, unless you're rolling right into phase 2. All right. Letters of support, enormously important for a lot of the agencies, but especially like the NSF, which is a biggie, a big funding agency. So don't underestimate how important it is. The agency, they're scientific people, they're in touch with the other agencies, they're in touch with the government's efforts and what they're doing. They may not be participants out in the economy, and they may not have a really great handle on how all of the stakeholders, businesses, universities, hospitals, all fit together in the economy. So you need to give them some indication that there's an appetite for this technology, all right? And the way you do it is with your letters of support. A good letter should establish the writer's authority. Okay, so it needs to start with, here I am. I'm the director of this teaching hospital, okay, in San Diego, and that's how I'm knowledgeable on this subject. That's how I have the authority to write this letter of support. And you should believe me about why this project is important. Number 2, it should establish the knowledge of the proposing organization, even naming the proposing entity in the project. So the letter should be specific enough to you so that it says, it's October 12th. Matt Hutton is applying for this proposal to the NSF to subtopic XYZ. You should indicate in your letter they know exactly what opportunity you're going for, why you're proposing for it, and that you're the team to do it. And then it should state future interest. So basically, you're using your letters of support in many cases to underscore that there is an economic likelihood of success. So, the letter should indicate, if I'm the director of this hospital, that, yeah, we've got 100 patients a year that could benefit from this technology, we would buy it. Or, maybe it's from a potential customer, maybe it's from an investor. Somebody that can speak to the marketability of and the commercialization of the product. Not all letters have to do that. Some may be just from scientific experts. They can only speak to the scientific merit. That's fine. But have a few in that case. Have a few different flavors of letter to really, really underscore the benefits of your project. Really important. Okay, the bio sketches. So this is the team section, or the bio sketches, basically your resumes. And again, follow the agency format. They're persnickety about how they want these things to be formatted. They'll have specific instructions. But the general guidance that I would share with you is don't be shy. You are selling your team just like any sales job. So don't be shy about talking yourself up, talking your team up. You're the team to do this because you have, the knowledge, the passion, the connections with industry, all these different things. All those pieces are there. So yeah, demonstrate not only your technical ability, but also your administrative competence. So, one piece of this is the technology, but another piece of it is, is this team going to be able to get the project done? They don't want to just release a couple $100,000 and see it kind of fizzle. So you can demonstrate by experience, or work experience, or just budget control of other projects, just something that gives them some confidence that you'll be able to spend the money productively. Establish team cohesion and industry linkages. So make it clear to them, if you're working with a team you've worked with before, that you've worked with them before. That is really helpful to just kind of demonstrate to them, yeah, we've done projects, we can tackle this as a group. Share the industry linkages. Do you go to conferences? Are you connected with the big stakeholders in this industry? Define your roles clearly. So which participant is doing what thing in your project? Which organization is doing what thing? What is the small business doing? What is the research institution doing? And then just know you're selling the team. You must deliver the team as described. So if you're including someone's resume, you need to have that person show up to do the work. Otherwise, you need to offer them an alternative. So the onus is on you if somebody drops out of the project to deliver somebody who has an equivalent resume, basically somebody who's also qualified. That's up to your agency program manager to, to adjudicate. So you'll make that case to them. And within reason, they'll accept it. I mean, that happens. People switch jobs and stuff. That's fine. But just tell them how you're going to work around them. And know that when you submit the proposal, you're really committing to delivering it as submitted, and that includes the team. I'm going to stop there. So that was kind of like my roundup just of SBIRs. I've got a few other resources I wanted to share with you, but they may or may not be like directly related to SBIRs. So if anybody has any questions or wants to go back to other slides or anything like that, or really focus in on any of those areas, then I think now is a good time to do it. No questions? All right, cool. Well, don't be shy if anything pops up. So, yeah, so other resources, I think if you are at the stage where you're going through SBIRs, then there are some other programs I think that are notable that you might have some interest in. The first I wanted to show is CalSeed. So this is a program that's administered basically by the California Energy Commission, kind of independently. So the California Energy Commission doesn't do it directly. I think a contractor maybe runs it for them, but it supports early stage entrepreneurs delivering projects that respond to clean energy efficiency, or storage needs. So I have seen them apply this broadly to like environmental technologies. So if you're doing something that's related to energy, environment, water, built environment, this might be up your alley. And the things that this program offers are professional development services, including mentorship, legal counsel, training, to support technology refinements, market development, and commercialization. This is direct, non-dilutive funding, just like the SBIRs. All right. And again, it's a multi-phase, so 150,000 for concept awards, and then 450,000 for prototype award. So it's also around small businesses doing innovative things specific to energy environment. But again, I've seen them apply that broadly. Yeah, and then access to key accelerator and incubator programs, test facilities. So basically, they're offering a network here. Yeah, and enhanced access to capital. So again, their network. The website is calseed.fund. I'm not sure what the schedule is for that this year, but it's one that I think would be worthwhile looking into. Again, if you're at this stage. All right. The Joint Interagency Field Experimentation Program. Okay, so this is a program that's administered by the Naval Postgraduate School. And it is specific to like innovative technologies that may be important for the Department of Defense. So the acronym is JIFX. The JIFX team leads experimentation and alternative methods to enable rapid technological development by cultivating a community of interest and hosting broadly scoped quarterly collaborative field events, which enable DoD, U.S. government, and allied stakeholders to identify, influence, and accelerate early-stage technology development that address national and collective security challenges. What does all this mean? Basically, it's a field day. So you can propose to bring a technology and demonstrate it to the staff that are at this field day. They usually do twice a year. A lot of the time it's at Camp Roberts, so pretty close to SLO. There is a solicitation, so I've got some websites here, and this basically contains like the technology, the types of technology that they would be soliciting. So it's pretty broad. There are definitely technologies that are applicable to other agencies, NASA, the National Institutes of Health, the DoD, SBIR program at large. But Yeah, it's an easier application process. It's shorter. It doesn't come with a lot of funding, but it gives you a chance to like do some handshakes with people who are actually agency staff, which is incredibly valuable. Um, one thing I'd say, so the DoD, in terms of their SBIR program, um, they restrict quite a bit the communication that you can have with agency staff while the program is live. So, in other words, while the solicitation is happening, um, you'll often be restricted to like maybe a 2 week period where you can call and do the agency outreach and talk to the technical folks there. Um, and you'll be restricted in terms of what you can talk about. But um, the DoD really kind of does a good job of having those technical staff follow up on those things. So I have seen on many occasions, conversations with DoD research staff that eventually lead to an SBIR solicitation. So if you make them aware of the technology that you're developing and they say, hey, that's cool, I see how that could be applied. The way the DoD SBIR program works is um, they can design, basically raise their hand and say, hey, I'd like to do an SBIR program this year. And they can get a topic in that might solicit technologies like yours. Doesn't mean they'll fund yours, but you can make it known to the agency that it's an option. And yeah, I think that has a very obvious benefits. All right. So then the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs. So the PTACs are kind of similar to the SBA offices, branch offices, but specifically for contracting for the Department of Defense, or at least that's how they're conceived. They've expanded their reach a little bit, but I think there are maybe a couple hundred of these, 1 or 200 in the United States. I want to say there are 5 in California. And yeah, basically they support people who are aiming to work with the Department of Defense, since it's a big complex machine. How does the Department of Defense solicit not only like research and development, but also just technologies or services in general? So it is free. They are really helpful for kind of guiding you and how to begin engaging with these agencies, which can feel like big and monolithic if you're a startup and just kind of getting into this world. I would suggest, joining 1 or 2. Again, it's free. You can just sign up or check in periodically and see what what webinars they have coming up. And I just listed a few here to kind of show you, by way of example, what exactly I'm thinking of. This is the NorCal PTAC. You can go to any of the PTACs, but a few upcoming webinars in the next few weeks is doing business with NASA, Caltrans North Region Virtual Procurement Fair, and how to do business with the government. So these staff are pretty knowledgeable about, like, if you hit any hitches with the like the agency websites, or have questions about like business requirements or like commercial structure requirements for working with these agencies. They're really, really good about that. They will pick up the phone. They have full-time staff, and they will pick up the phone and talk to you. So make yourself, take advantage of those resources. There's also one, this has just come to my attention, but the Department of Transportation, another executive branch agency, has just started a similar program just for the Department of Transportation. I've got the website there. I'm not as familiar with them. I've never worked with them before, but it was conceived basically to work with the same way. And yeah, take a look at a few of them, like the San Diego one, the Los Angeles one, the PTACs. They have events that you may not expect, like doing business with the county, doing business with, whatever state agency. And you can even talk to the buyers in some cases. So like the procurement officers from the government will just come in and do like a open session. And yeah, that's really helpful. Helpful to be able to learn how to engage with them. All right. So this is the last one, and this is again specific for the DoD. The DoD, by the way, they solicit a lot of technologies they'll be the end users of, but they always, always, always want to know how you're going to apply those to other things. So they want to put money into technologies that will also be applicable for other parts of the economy. Very important to them. These are the environmental programs of the Department of Defense. So the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program. Um, addresses environmental and resilience science and technology. It invests across a broad spectrum of basic and applied research and advanced development. So these are basically like grants for environmental technology development. The second program, and these are kind of administered together out of the same office. The second program is the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program. This basically is for like similar technologies that are a little bit further down the road toward commercialization. All right. And it's a technology validation program. So they will work with you, if you need to pilot to help you find an area to pilot, and demonstrate to them that the technology can work. And then they'll collect pilot data. You can take that and try to make a business out of it. They also do vendor fairs out of this program. So a lot of those are virtual in the age of COVID, which, it has pluses and minuses. I mean, it opens it up to a broader audience, but you don't get to the in-person contact. But nevertheless, vendor fairs are always really great if you want to do business with the government. I've seen a lot of kind of SBIR organizations transition into some of these programs and start to work with the DoD with environmental technologies in that way. All right. And that's it. That's all I got. So if anybody's got any questions, we can skip back to any part of the presentation if you want more information. And if you have follow-up to it, you can access me for free through the CIE. So if you're working on an application or you plan to work on an application, just feel free to reach out. I'm available to you to work one-on-one through any of these things. If you want to like send me, pieces of proposals and have me review them and stuff like that, then please feel free. The list of websites, just I'm not sure which websites were they. Oh, this. Yeah, Linda, you may have been getting to this one. And this the award data. So that's for other grants. Oh, yeah. Well, I can share this presentation. So you'll have those handy. Yeah. No more questions. All right. Well, that's it for me then.